Hi friends, welcome to today's lesson. So today we're going to be talking about the third kind of graph, which is a bar graph. So we're going to create our own bar graph today so that you can track the weather for the next 10 days. So let's go ahead and get started. So behind me I've made just a short kind of, I guess you could say, to-do list on how to create a bar graph. So you can follow along with this when you create your own, or you can do it step by step with me. So the first thing that we'll need to do, of course, is create our graph. We'll insert the measurements. We'll add a title so that our reader, the person looking at our graph, knows what our graph is about. And finally, we will start tracking and surveying the outdoors with each weather that we're going to experience on each day to create, of course, our data. All right, so to get started, all you need is a blank piece of paper. If you have it, a ruler, and then of course something to write with. All right, so with your ruler, you're gonna start by creating just a nice straight vertical line. So if you're using a blank piece of paper, I encourage you to make it, to have your paper horizontally, so the long way across, and to make sure that you're kind of using the whole page when you create your graph today. It's better to go bigger. All right, so I'm gonna just draw my first vertical line, and we're gonna be creating kind of like an L shape here. So make sure you have lots of room on the other side. So there's my vertical line, and now I'm gonna make a horizontal line connected at the bottom. So again, making it as straight as you can so our graph is nice and neat and tidy. All right, so you should have something that looks like a big L on your page. So you can put your ruler aside for now. So that's how we create a bar graph. It's really, really basic. So we've done the first thing. All right, now it's time to insert our measurements. So let's stop for a moment and think about, what are we trying to measure or collect data on? Well, we're gonna collect data on the weather. So we know that there's gonna have to be a weather option. And we also need to, of course, include days. What days we experience that weather on, or how many days we experience that weather on. So with our horizontal line, this is where we're going to measure how many days. So we are planning on tracking this for 10 days. So we know that the biggest number here is going to go up to 10. Unless you're planning on tracking the weather for more than 10 days, our graph will not go beyond 10. So at the very top of your vertical line, I'd like you to please just write a 10. Then of course at the bottom you can go ahead and put a 1, making sure it's in line with your horizontal line. So not below, but kind of like this line continues and it's sitting on an imaginary line. All right, so now we need to add in all the numbers in between. It's really important though that we make sure it's spaced out evenly so that our graph is easy to read and understand, and so it makes sense. So the easiest way to do this is to, well, let's cut 10 in half and go from there. So we know half of 10 is 5. So right smack in the middle, I'd like you to write a 5. All right, now it's gonna be a lot easier for us to fill in the other numbers from 1 to 10. So you can go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna start at my 5 and work down to my 1 first. Again, making sure they're really evened out. If you're finding that they're getting squished or it's too spread out, make sure you go back and erase and try again. And then I'm gonna go up from 5, 6, 7. So here I'm about to run into a problem because I'm gonna have to squish my 8 and 9 in here, and it's not gonna work with my graph very well. So I'm gonna go ahead and erase at my 5 and just shrink my 5 and shrink my 10 a little bit. I did write it pretty big. So again, I'm just gonna rewrite my 5 a little bit smaller, my 10 a little bit smaller as well, and now I can try again. 6, 7, and again, I'm just gonna shrink my 6, 8, 9. Another strategy that you could use as well that's maybe a little more advanced would be to use your ruler each time. So we could also use our ruler and draw a line and draw 10 lines all the way up. Again though, that's a little more advanced, so we're just gonna do our very best to spread out our numbers from 1 to 10 for this lesson today. All right, so now that we have our numbers from 1 to 10, we need to add a label on the side here telling our reader what these numbers represent. Do these numbers represent how many turtles? How many airplanes? No, these numbers represent how many days that we experience that kind of weather. So you're going to turn your head, turn your body, and you're going to write days. All right, now the person reading our graph knows that the numbers from 1 to 10 represent how many days. Now it's time for us to insert the weather. So we, of course, in Lake Country, we have so many different crazy weather patterns. So we're gonna try to make this kind of basic, but of course there will be limitations when we do our graphing as well. So at the bottom, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna write the different kinds of weather that we might experience. So you can either use words or you can use pictures. So the very first kind of weather that I'm going to record, of course, is going to be sunny. We've been really lucky in experiencing a lot of sunshine, so I'm hoping we'll have a lot of sunny days. So I'm simply going to write sunny. And I'll draw a small little sunshine down below as well. Just like so. Now, what other kinds of weather might we experience over these 10 days? Well, we'll probably experience cloudy weather, where it's kind of overcast, gray looking outside, cloudy. I'll just draw some clouds. We might also experience, of course, rainy days. Rain. A lot of days in Lake Country, we experience something called partly cloudy, which means that it's a mix of both sun and clouds. So I'm going to include that as well. I'm going to put partly cloudy. And I'll draw a little cloud with the sunshine peeking out from it. At this point, you may have to make your graph a little bit longer. What other kinds of weather might we experience over the next 10 days? Well, we might experience snow or hail. So we can include that in our graph if we'd like. Even though it might not be all that likely, there's still a possibility it could happen. So I'm going to write snow/hail. And little snowflakes. I really hope that we don't get any of that over the next 10 days. All right, so at this point, it's up to you. If you want to add more weather possibilities, you can do so. Some ideas might be thunderstorms. Maybe it's a windy day, maybe it's foggy. But for today's example, I'm gonna stick to just 5 different kinds of weather patterns. All right, so just like we did with our days, we now need to add a label at the bottom. And of course, it's pretty obvious, but it's still important that we get in the habit of adding a label. And of course, our label for down below, this is our weather. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have inserted our measurements, so I'm gonna check that off. Third thing we need to do now is add a title. So what could our title be? Well, I'm gonna make our title exactly what we're doing. It's tracking the weather. So our title, of course, goes at the very top of our graph. Again, you can use a ruler and draw a nice straight line to write your title on. All right, so I've put a line. Now I'm going to record our title, which is Tracking the Weather. There we go. All right, friends, so you have now created your own bar graph table. So now you're ready to start recording the weather. Maybe we'll start with what the weather is like today. Today will be our day 1, and I'm looking out the window and I'm noticing that it's sunny, but there's also a lot of clouds in the sky. So today we're experiencing partly cloudy weather. So just like we read in the story, we're going to use a different color for each kind of weather, so that all of our bars in our bar graph will be different colors, and it'll be just so much easier for us to read. So, of course, for today, we've decided it's partly cloudy. I'm going to use a green marker. Now it's time for me to create my first bar. So days, well, we're only on day 1, so we know that the bar will go no higher than that. So my bar, I'm going to slide my finger along from the 1 all the way across to partly cloudy. I know my bar will go right where it's lined up with the 1. And now I can go ahead, attach it to the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and shade it in. Again, it's really important when we're making graphs that we're doing it nice and neat. We're taking our time. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. So our graph shows that we've had one day of partly cloudy weather. Let's say tomorrow it's partly cloudy again. What would I do? Well, that would mean that we have 2 days of partly cloudy weather. So I would go ahead and do the same thing, line my finger up at the top of the 2, slide it all the way across, and I could go ahead and make my bar bigger again. Again, you would be using the same color, shading it in, and that would then say that we've had 2 days of partly cloudy weather. Maybe on your 3rd day, it's sunny, blue skies. Again, start at the 1, that's our first sunny day. Slide it across so you're on top of the weather. And then you could create your bar. Again, shading it in, using a different color. I failed to do that in this example here. All right, friends, so by the end of it, you should have bars of all different sizes, hopefully all across your chart, but who knows? Nobody knows what the weather might be like, so we'll have to see at the end of 10 days. Thanks for joining me for today's lesson.